of this generation. He spoke of the worst thing that can happen to this country. First, quoting, a massive casualty-producing event somewhere in the Western world. It may be in the United States of America. Then the general continued, the Western world, the free world, loses what it cherishes most, and that is freedom and liberty we've seen for a couple of hundred years in this grand experiment that we call democracy. It was this super-patriotic warrior's fear that we would lose that most cherished liberty because of another attack, one, again quoting General Franks, that causes our population to question our own Constitution and to begin to militarize our country in order to avoid a repeat of another mass casualty-producing event, which in fact then begins to potentially unravel the fabric of our Constitution. And here we are, the fabric of our Constitution being unraveled anyway. Habeas corpus neutered, the rights of self-defense now as malleable and impermanent as clay, a president stifling all critics by every means available, and when he runs out of those, by simply lying about what they said or felt. And all this even without the dreaded attack. General Franks, like all of us, loves this country and believes not just in its values, but in its continuity. He has been trained to look for threats to that continuity from without. He has perhaps been as naive as the rest of us in failing to keep close enough vigil on the threats to that continuity from within. Secretary of State Rice first cannot remember urgent cautionary meetings with counterterrorism officials before 9/11. Then, within hours of that lie, her spokesman confirms the meetings in question. Then she dismisses those meetings as nothing new, yet insists she wanted the same cautions expressed to Secretaries Ashcroft and Rumsfeld. Mr. Rumsfeld, meantime, has been unable to accept the most logical and simple influence of the most noble and neutral of advisors. He and his employer insist they rely on the generals in the field, but dozens of those generals have now come forward to say how their words, their experiences have been ignored. And, of course, inherent in the Pentagon's war-making functions is the regulation of presidential war lust. Enacting that regulation should include everything up to symbolically wrestling the chief executive to the floor if necessary. Yet, and it is Pentagon transcripts that now tell us this, evidently Mr. Rumsfeld's strongest check on Mr. Bush's ambitions was to get someone to excise the phrase mission accomplished out of the infamous Air Force carrier speech of May 1st, 2003. Even while the same empty words hung on a banner over the president's shoulder. And the vice president, he is a chilling figure, still unable, it seems, to accept the conclusions of his own party's leaders in the Senate, that the foundations of his public positions are made out of sand. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but he still says so. There was no link between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaeda, but he still says so. And thus gripping firmly these figments of his own imagination, Mr. Cheney lives on in defiance and spreads around him and before him darkness like some contagion of fear. They are never wrong and they never regret. Admirable in a French torch singer, cataclysmic in an American leader. Thus the sickening attempt to blame the Foley scandal on the negligence of others or the Clinton era, even though the Foley scandal began before the Lewinsky scandal. Thus, last month's enraged attacks on this administration's predecessors about Osama bin Laden, a projection of their own negligence in the immediate months before 9/11. Thus, the terrifying attempt to hamstring the fundament of our freedom, the Constitution, a triumph for al-Qaeda, one the terrorists could not hope to achieve on their own with 100 9/11s. And thus, worst of all, perhaps, these newest lies by President Bush about Democrats choosing to await another attack and not listen to the conversations of terrorists. It is the terror and the guilt within your own heart, Mr. Bush, that you redirect at others who simply wish for you to temper your certainty with counsel. It is the failure and the incompetence within your own memory, Mr. Bush, that leads you to demonize those who might merely quote to you the pleadings of Oliver Cromwell. I beseech you, in the bowels of Christ, think it possible you may be mistaken. It is not the Democrats whose inaction in the face of the enemy you fear, sir. It is your own before 9/11, and you alone know this, perhaps afterwards. Mr. President, these new lies go to the heart of what it is that you truly wish to preserve. It is not our freedom, nor our country. Your actions against the Constitution give irrefutable proof of that. You want to preserve one political party's power, and obviously you will sell this country out to do it. These are lies about the Democrats piled atop lies about Iraq, piled atop lies about your preparations for al-Qaeda. To you, perhaps, they feel like the weight of 1,000,000 centuries, as crushing, as immovable. But they are not. If you add more lies to them, you cannot free yourself and us from them. But if you stop fabricating quotes and stop building straw men and stop inspiring those around you to do the same, you may yet liberate yourself and this nation. Please, sir, do not throw this country's principles away because your lies have made it such that you can no longer differentiate between the terrorists and the critics. Good night.